Geometry Dash and Roblox Obbies are some of the hardest games in the world to play and master, and their communities are actually quite intertwined. Geometry Dash is likely the second most played game by people within the pro obbying community. This also means quite a lot of Geometry Dash players, even including people like Zoink, have played pro obbying games like Eternal Towers of Hell. So this begs the question, which game is harder? Well, it depends on what you mean by harder. Okay, wait. Just to give some clarity, this video has technically been made before, but many people were unsatisfied with the results of these videos. So I'm taking a completely different approach by splitting this matchup into 4 categories and getting people who are elite players in both Geometry Dash and Roblox Obbies to decide which is the harder game, who I will introduce you to right now. This is Greenbean1421. Some of Greenbean's accomplishments in Geometry Dash include 90% on Slaughterhouse, 42 to 85% on Tidal Wave, and 100% on Zodiac. This makes Greenbean what we estimate to be a top 500 player in all of Geometry Dash. His accomplishments in Roblox Obbies include beating Tower of Impending Doom, Citadel of Infinite Void on 75 FPS, and Tower of Spiraling Fates. This makes him a top 10 obby player in the world. This is cvrro. cvrro's accomplishments in Geometry Dash include 100% on Arcturus, 100% on Kinos, and 91% on Zodiac. This makes cvrro also a top 500 player in Geometry Dash. His accomplishments in Roblox Obbies include beating Tower of Impending Doom, beating Citadel of Infinite Void on 75 FPS, and failing the 4th last jump of Tower of Spiraling Fates. This makes him a top 20 obby player in the world. And this is A6IQ1. A6's accomplishments in Geometry Dash include 100% on Deimos, 49 to 100% on Slaughterhouse, and beating Spectre in 3 runs. This makes him approximately in the top 400 Geometry Dash players in the world. His accomplishments in Obbies include beating Tower of Impending Doom, Citadel of Infinite Void, and getting to floor 5B on Tower of Void. This makes him a top 20 obby player. Now, it may sound like these numbers for our players are inconsistent, but trust me, these are their rankings after taking more than just their accomplishments into account, and they're accurate according to themselves as well. It may also sound like these guys are a lot better at obbies than Geometry Dash, but with the Geometry Dash community being a lot larger, the difference is a lot smaller than it sounds. And because of that, these 3 are the best combined Geometry Dash players and Roblox Obbyists in the world. Keep in mind, the entire script of this video has been run through all of these players to make sure everything said is as accurate as possible. And finally, make sure to like and subscribe to this video. It took me quite a bit of work to put together, and only 2% of my viewers are subscribed. So subscribe now, and also share this to people who would find this topic interesting. Okay, without further blabbing, our first category is complexity. When it comes to Geometry Dash, it may seem like a simple game with simple mechanics, but this is only true to some degree. Geometry Dash has 9 different modes, the more prominent ones being Cube, Ship, and Wave. These modes are all controlled differently, meaning that a lot of players can be more skilled at the Wave than they would be at the UFO if they simply just play it a lot more. On top of this, every hard level has to be completely memorized, with some levels like Requiem or Killbot taking this to the extreme, being coined as memory levels, where you basically cannot see where you are whatsoever and have to completely memorize the entire layout of the level. But at the end of the day, Geometry Dash is a 2D platformer controlled by one singular input, the click, so it keeps its overall simple nature. If we compare this to Roblox Obbies, Obbies are a 3D platformer game where multiple inputs are used in every jump, with WASD for movement, the spacebar for jumping, shift for shift locking, the mouse right click to grab your camera like this, the scroll wheel for zooming, and some lesser used keys like the alignment keys or the F key for corner flipping. And finally, the mouse, the most complex input. You can play Obbies on different devices like mobile or controller, so their inputs look different, but currently PC players are the only ones who have really pushed the skill ceiling, as using PC is the most effective way to play Obbies. To put this into perspective about just how complicated one jump in an obby can be, I'll do what is considered to be a hard but not a top jump in this Roblox obby called Tower of Lavender Luster, which happens to be the 23rd hardest tower ever beaten, but isn't a particularly hard jump within it, and this jump is infinitely easier than the jump you're seeing on your screen right now, for example. I'll have an input counter right here to show you how many individual inputs were made in order to complete this single jump. Yes, that took 21 separate inputs, including turns and zooms, many simultaneously at the same time. So what's the main takeaway? Well, even if I ignore the complexity of the Roblox physics engine with all its weird glitches and whatnot, where you can dance through walls, clip through walls, lodge, do whatever the hell this is called, we are comparing a 3D platformer with a multitude of inputs that are often simultaneous versus a 2D platformer with a single input, which is honestly not even a fair comparison because the 3D platformer would automatically be more complicated and it's not even close. So Roblox Obbies are 100% more complex. Now, I may sound sort of biased towards Obbies with all that yap I just talked about, but trust me, Geometry Dash is about to get glazed, and this portion was long for a reason, as we will be referring back to it. Our next category is preciseness. When measuring which game is more precise, we can use the previous explanation of the complexity of obbies. Let's assume we have an obby and a GD level that are the same difficulty and have the same amount of jumps. Let's say 200. For Roblox obbies, since there are many inputs involved in landing every jump, this means that since these are theoretically the same difficulty, every individual input is not all that precise when you compare it to the inputs from the Geometry Dash level. In fact, it's not even close. The amount of precision a 2D platformer using one input needs to be equal difficulty with a 3D platformer simultaneously using multiple inputs is, to put it lightly, very high. The individual inputs for Geometry Dash in this case would easily be at least 4 or 5 times harder, if not more. So Roblox Obbies being more complex actually works against it in this category, as Geometry Dash absolutely slaughters obbies when it comes to precision. Our third category is beginner friendliness, of which I actually have an example of a beginner of both games to show you. Our example is Bundun. Yeah, this funky guy with over 2 million subscribers. We'll compare how many streaming hours it took him to reach what we believe are around equal difficulty for a player who is equally skilled at both obbies and Geometry Dash, it being around high challenging and the easiest of easy demons. In this case, they are the Nightmare and Tower of Deep Darkness. So how long in stream time did Bundun take to beat this level and this tower? Well, he took a little over 9 hours for Geometry Dash to beat the Nightmare. Not bad. But how long until he beat Tower of Deep Darkness?
Yes! I did it!
Oh, 45 hours. That's a lot more than it took him to beat the Nightmare, isn't it? Okay, wait. This is a little unfair because he did have some previous Geometry Dash experience and he didn't for obbies, as his hardest before starting all of this was Jumper, a level ranked at the harder difficulty. But he was super rusty as well, and said,
"And this was a year ago, bro."
So I think this is generous. We will double the amount of time for his Geometry Dash time, even though the difference between Jumper and the Nightmare is much more than Stereo Madness and Jumper. And even then, the times don't even come close. Now, let's throw that example in the bin, even though it's pretty sufficient evidence. If we think about it, the more complex a game is, typically, the harder it will be for a beginner to learn, get used to, and become good at, right? And what game is more complex? Our fourth category is going to be the current skill ceiling, or in other words, what is actually harder? The hardest obby, Tower Wiggle Core, or the hardest GD level, Amethyst? Well, it's actually a very obvious answer, but I'll give some background. Geometry Dash started to gain mainstream attention when they released the 2.0 update back in 2015, and they've been mainstream ever since, with concurrent player counts in the tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. So this community has had 10 years and millions of players throughout that time, on top of a very competitive community, all to push the skill ceiling of their game. So how does pro obbying compare? Well, we can mostly ignore all these joke obby games that aren't hard at all, like Tower of Hell and Slap Tower, and focus specifically on Eternal Towers of Hell, the most popular obby game, and tiered obbies. These were pretty small and underground and only started gaining any mainstream attention in 2018, but not a notable amount until 2020 after Tower of Hell blew up in popularity. But when I say a notable amount, I don't even mean 1,000 concurrent players at this time. They averaged around 300 to 750 from what I could tell. And even now, in 2025, where all of these hard obby games in total amass to around 3,000 to 4,000 players on average, this still pales in comparison to Geometry Dash, who are not at their peak right now and still consistently get over 20,000 active players on Steam alone. So if we take these stats and format it like this, I wonder which community would have the higher skill ceiling reached. Yeah, in case you didn't know, Amethyst, the top 1 level in GD, is much harder than Tower of Wiggle Core, the hardest obby in Roblox. I'm adding in an emergency 5th category last second, but this is just to clear something up. When it comes to the absolute peak difficulty both games can reach, well, it's completely immeasurable for both. Levels like Ton 618 and obbies like Pseudo-Parallelodromus. Okay, I'm an elite obbyist, and I can confidently say that whatever the hell that was is completely impossible for a person to pull off. These are both so far beyond human capabilities that even if we have chips implanted into our brains, we are never coming close to beating either. In short, both games can be as easy or as hard as you want them to be with basically no limits, as can other games like Osu or Guitar Hero. So both get a point here. I'm now going to cover some smaller subcategories, things that aren't game-changing but still matter, and they will get half a point each. Nerves. Geometry Dash players suffer more from nerves as they're playing a non-stop game, and since their inputs are much more precise, nerves causing you to click even a single frame late can cause you to die. While in obbies, you can always take a second to pause anytime you want, and we generally do not have the same non-stop gameplay that GD does, nor are nerves as punishing in a lot of scenarios. Muscle memory. Geometry Dash requires more muscle memory as, once again, it's a non-stop game where you're basically just memorizing the timings on when to click to beat a level. Obbies does not require this much muscle memory for almost anything. Luck/RNG. Obbies wins this by a landslide because the Roblox physics engine is one of the jankiest ever made. There's always a chance of something weird happening during your run. On top, there's always the chance of disconnecting mid-run and losing all of your progress. While these issues are non-existent in Geometry Dash, as its engine is much more consistent and the game can be played offline, so no disconnections. And finally, finger locking. Obbies usually have more issues with finger locking, as you quite literally just have more fingers to, well, lock. With most people using all 5 fingers on their left hand versus Geometry Dash with 1 finger, it's pretty obvious why obby players suffer from finger locking more often. With that makes the scores 4-4. So which game is harder? Well, it actually depends on how you look at it. If we compare the top players' skills for both games, then simply because of the fact Geometry Dash has had way more players and basically double the amount of time obbies have had to reach the skill ceiling, then it becomes obvious that Geometry Dash is a lot harder in that aspect. But if we go to the opposite end and look at someone who's a complete noob to both games, they're almost certainly going to have a much easier time with Geometry Dash, as Roblox's movement and mechanics are very hard to get used to and master, making Roblox much harder for beginners. Now wait, don't leave. We're actually having an exclusive interview with our top players here, cvrro and Greenbean, who I'll remind you, Greenbean is a top 500 GD player and a top 10 Obby player, while cvrro is a top 500 GD player and a top 20 Obby player. Unfortunately, A6IQ1 wasn't on Discord when we did the interview, so he's not in it. But we are going to ask the other two some interesting questions about both communities, how they compare, and also have a listen on their experience as a pro of both games. Okay guys, so even despite your numbers for Obbies sounding more impressive, which game are you guys actually better at, and by how much?
So better at, well, I'm obviously better at Obbies, like 100%, and definitely by far too, mainly because I've been playing them since like April 2020, right? That's like almost 5.5 years, which is a long time, and I've been really consistently playing GD since like maybe late 2021. But even then, I haven't really been that consistent with it as compared to Obbies. Like I probably have around 3 times the amount of playtime in Obbies as in GD. So obviously, I'm going to be a lot better at Obbies.
For me, it's probably a bit harder to tell than it is for Green, but that's because Green kept on playing etoh before he went into GD. But for me, it was the opposite. I was playing GD, and then out of nowhere, I just kind of decided to go back to Obby since I had some experience like in 2020, but just not much. And then ever since then, like now I probably have around equal playtime on each games. I would say I'm probably better at Obbies right now, only because even though I have honestly probably less time on Obbies than I do GD since I have like over 3,000 hours in GD, I still think I'm better at Obbies just because the experience of getting better at GD definitely helped me a lot in Obbies.
So even though we've established that Obbies is at least 9 times out of 10 harder for beginners, at what point do you think Geometry Dash becomes harder? Because we did establish that the skill ceiling for Geometry Dash is much higher.
Obviously, yeah, GD starts out a lot easier, but I think it starts to get a lot harder to progress in GD when you reach like maybe the mid-extreme demon skill level. Like around levels like maybe Sonic Wave and Yatagarasu. Like levels of when you're approaching the demon list, but you're not there yet. Because when you reach that skill level, if you're just like an average player and you're not just extremely good at every single game you play, your progress is going to start to slow down a whole lot. And to really get anywhere above that and be pretty consistent with your progress, it's really hard to be able to do that. And that's why I think, it's just a lot harder to progress in GD at a later point than compared to Obbies.
I think I kind of agree with it, especially something that I've noticed is that I'll see a lot of players, like for example Obby players who get to like maybe the low extreme demon skill level, like maybe Bloodbath, and then they'll say that GD is a lot easier than Obbies, but I don't think they realize how much further GD goes compared to Obbies.
I can definitely see that, because the top extreme demons are just way, way harder than the lower extreme demons, right?
I think because people also think they're just like, with Obbies it's kind of consistent, like in the how it just exponentially gets harder with each difficulty, but with GD it just stops at extreme demon. Like, Cataclysm and Amethyst are the exact same rating, so maybe people just don't really understand that, and they don't know that extreme demon is that big of a difficulty.
Maybe they need to change it at some point, because it's kind of like, it's weird, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why they haven't yet, but they should.
Alright. So, if the hardest Obby, Tower of Wigglecore, were to be placed on the demon list, where do you think it would place?
This is a question that I've really thought of before, but I'm going to stick to what I thought before, that TOID is probably around Slaughterhouse, and with the difficulty I think Wigglecore is, it's probably around maybe between Anathema or Avernus, or between Silent Cliffs of Anathema. So I think it's either 8 or 9 on the demon list.
Yeah, that sounds about accurate to me.
So, on the contrary, what Obby difficulty would Amethyst be, the current top 1 level, if we were to give it a difficulty?
I kind of think of it as how close are we to the skill limit in GD, which is kind of hard to tell just because every once in a while, like for example, we kind of thought that we were close to it like years ago, but now new players are out progressing it a lot more. So it's kind of hard to tell because, in my opinion, I imagine the absolute peak of Unreal to be the human skill limit. So I would assume we're probably around high peak Unreal right now.
The last question, if we were to theoretically stop improving in Geometry Dash altogether, how long do you think it would take for Roblox Obbies to finally catch up to the skill ceiling Geometry Dash has reached as of right now in 2025?
Alright, so I'm going to go based off of what I said earlier, that TID is probably around Slaughterhouse. And Slaughterhouse was verified doggy in December of 2021, and that was, you know, almost 4 years ago now. So yeah, I'm gonna say probably around. I'll give Obbies a little bit of leniency. You say maybe 3 to 3.5 years to catch up to GD.
Yeah.
Alright guys, thanks to Greenbean, cvrro, and A6IQ1 for helping me make this video. Make sure you check out their channels as they are really good at both of these games and whatnot. Links in the description. And make sure to like and subscribe to this video, and share it to other people you think would find it interesting. Peace out.